Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking on something, well, pretty intense. We've got these source excerpts, lyrics, and spoken word from Bubba Sparxxx's official video for Lil Ole Me. Really raw stuff. And if you're looking for insight, like real, unvarnished insight into a creative mind dealing with personal collapse, this is probably it. Our mission today is to unpack this huge contradiction in the material. It swings like wildly. On one side, you get these incredibly self-assured claims about his art, his skill, total mastery, and then bam, the other side is just stark, painful confessions. Addiction, failure, again and again. It's like he's presenting himself as both this amazing architect of sound and also a completely broken man living in ruin.
Yeah, it's quite the deep dive we have here. It gives us this really unfiltered look into a major life pivot. And what's so striking is how it's all woven together. This isn't just, here's my art and separately here's my struggle. No, he's actively framing his personal failures, his life crumbling right alongside his identity as this originator.
Yeah.
It really forces you, the listener, to try and square that circle, the genius that made him famous and the self-destruction that almost ended it all.
Okay, yeah, let's start with that genius part, because the track definitely kicks off with huge creative confidence. He's super specific about his technical chops, right? What details does he give us that build up this sense of, artistic superiority?
No, he basically opens the door to his process and the language he uses. It's very technical, very deliberate. He mentions using ranging words for selecting beats. That sounds like careful curation, not just luck.
Exactly. Like he's engineering the sound, not just waiting for inspiration to strike. He talks about perfecting heat, and he points to his specific technical strengths using multi-syllables and uncanny sense of rhythm and timing. And for anyone listening who doesn't know multi-syllables, that's about complex internal rhymes. It's high-level stuff in hip-hop, real mastery.
It absolutely signals extreme control. And he uses this skill to back up his bigger claim, that he's an originator. He sees himself as the pioneer, the one who laid the groundwork. And if you're the first, well, what does that make everyone else who comes after? He flat out says they become imitators.
But it feels like more than just calling them copycats. He uses these really powerful, almost industrial metaphors to define his role. He says somebody had to be an elevator, somebody had to be a tender.
That word tender. Yeah. In this context, that makes you think he's the one supplying the core material. One keeping the engine running, maybe. Like, he provides the blueprint. He sees himself as, essential infrastructure for the whole thing. And this feeling of being indispensable. It really comes through when he talks about his competition. It's actually pretty shocking. He describes them as, babies in an incubator, sickly waiting on me to go.
Well, wait, babies in an incubator?
That's a really visceral image for your rivals. Yeah, it paints them as not just less skilled, but, weak. Dependent, literally just waiting for him to die so he can step up. That's immense confidence. Almost cruel, suggesting he sees himself operating on a whole different level of power. Absolutely. He sets this incredibly high bar. Creative perfection, untouchable status. But see, that's the core tension, right? As soon as he defines himself as the master of rhythm and timing, the whole narrative just flips violently into this timeline of complete personal time failure.
Right. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. He starts by talking about this long period of discipline. Claims he stood on principle for 18 plus years, kept his face card unblemished, as he puts it, his reputation clean.
That 18-year stretch is so important. It shows he didn't just fall into success, he built it carefully on principle.
Yeah.
Which makes the collapse feel even heavier. What's just a slow slide? It feels like a sudden break, a rupture.
And he pinpoints it. He says it happened around 2018. That's when his perspective changed. And he uses this devastatingly cold phrase. He says his values got managed. Managed? Wow, that just screams loss of control, loss of agency.
And when that principle finally broke, the fallout was immediate, catastrophic, really. Like dominoes falling. He lists it right out. My marriage crumbled, my baggage fumbled. And crucially, the old enemy came back. Addiction reared this ugly head again.
Yeah.
But he doesn't call it a new fight. He calls it a familiar hell I already been to 2 or 3 times.
Oh man, that familiar hell part. That just hits hard. It means he knew. He knew the signs. He knew where that road led, and he went down it anyway. Which brings us to this really profound self-awareness that runs through the whole breakdown. He regrets that he do little when you know enough, but you do little. Just pause on that for a second. Here's a guy who mastered complexity, rhythm, timing in his art. But his personal timeline is defined by this crushing thing. Having the intelligence, knowing what's wrong, but being totally unable to act on it. He knows enough, but does little. That's tragic.
It's that gap, isn't it? The gap between articulating the problem and actually solving it,
Yeah.
especially with something as cyclical as addiction. And that cycle is exactly what we get into next, the crushing repetition of it all.
Yeah, the source material is just relentlessly honest about the financial side of this cycle, the devastation. He mentions the repetition, going broke, like really, really broke for the third time.
Yeah.
You can just feel the exhaustion in that, clawing your way back just to end up at zero again.
And he contrasts it with his earlier success. He mentions when he first got rich, he didn't even know what to do with it all, the money, the opportunity, which, happens to artists, sudden fame. But the fact that he's back at rock bottom for the third time, it shows that initial confusion wasn't the issue anymore. It's become a pattern he can't seem to break.
And you see the coping mechanisms laid bare. He talks about wanting to mask the whole experience, as want to cover up the taste, want to cover up the smell. Like the failure, the shame, the internal feeling needs to be completely hidden.
Right, and this is where we get that really interesting specific detail about flavors. Lime versus lemon. He says he preferred lime over lemon both times he got rich. Why that detail? Well, in the context of covering up an unpleasant taste or smell, lime is often used culturally, right, to mask harsh alcohol, or maybe the residue of drug use. It feels like a very specific nod to managing the nasty physical reality of intoxication or maybe withdrawal.
It's such a specific metaphor for self-medication. Not just using something, but actively trying to override what it's physically doing to him. And the tools are right there. Needing another shot of liquor or another hit of this dope. And the word again just hangs so heavy there. He follows it up thinking it's time to quit again. It just highlights this exhausting perpetual loop he feels trapped in.
And all that internal turmoil. It absolutely poisons his external life, especially his relationships. He confirms this deep self-loathing is at the heart of it. He gives us this line that just punches you in the gut. Love your wife, but not too bitter because you hate you. And that connection is so key for us to understand. His inability to handle his own chaos, the addiction, the money problems, the failure turns into resentment against himself. And that self-hatred is so toxic, it just spills out, makes real connection impossible, even with someone he obviously loves. The hate he has for himself just ruins the love he has for others.
The honesty is just, staggering. Okay, so let's shift focus outwards a bit. We've seen the originator at his peak, and we've seen the man at his lowest point. How does he view the world looking in on all this? His very public, very painful struggle.
He seems incredibly fatalistic about society overall, just states it plainly. The world's running on evil. Doesn't even sound angry, really, just weary. In fact, he seemed to have accepted.
And what about the critics, the so-and-so saying stuff? Does he engage?
Nah, not really. He just dismisses it all. I'm guessing I doubt it. It kind of signals that when you're battling these huge internal crises, addiction, ruin, self-hatred, all that external noise just fades away. It stops mattering. And this dismissal kind of leads into how he sees the path he's on. He admits the world never really got him. Notes, they never even love me. They never really like me. But he seems to accept the difficulty of it. Says the hard road he's on, it ain't never getting crowded.
That line feels pretty lonely, isolated. It's a tough path, but it's his path, and he accepts it. Maybe nobody's following because he's too unique, the originator. Or maybe because he's become this cautionary tale nobody wants to copy. And the culmination of this whole journey, the heights of the genius, the depths of the destruction, it all boils down to this final statement. It feels like ultimate humility. Or maybe just total resignation.
Yeah, after mapping out the highs, the multi-syllable skills, and the lows being broke for the third damn time, he ends with the simplest possible statement. It strips away everything else, the performer, the rival, the addict, the husband, all gone, leaving just the core, vulnerable self facing reality.
It's just little old me.
It's a powerful moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like acceptance, all the boasts, the complex lyrics, the crushing pain, just distilled down to that little old me.
Wow, what an incredible tension we've walked through today. The originator mastering rhythm and timing versus the individual whose personal life is all about broken timing. Too little, too late, leading to these repeated cycles of ruin.
And the real value here, I think, is seeing how someone with such undeniable skill, genuine artistic success, can still be completely undone by their internal chaos. The genius, the perfect rhythm, it didn't protect him from that familiar hell. Not at all. Which leaves you, the listener, with this final thought to chew on, maybe. He says it himself. You know enough, but you do little. If knowing is the first step, what actually separates knowing the solution from being able to implement it, especially when you're facing that same familiar hell for the third time, is the weight of that history just too much to overcome sometimes, something to think about?